Hello everyone. I am Dreaming Stories and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep. So before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. Story number 1. The man who walked into my office looked like he hadn't slept in days. He wore a tailored coat that had seen better months, and his hands trembled slightly as he placed a photograph on my desk. A woman, maybe mid-30s, smiling in the kind of way that made you suspicious. It was the smile of someone who either knew something you didn't, or wanted you to think she did. "This is my wife, Claire," he said, voice dry. "I need you to follow her." I'd been a PI in Montreal for almost 15 years. In that time, I'd tailed cheating spouses, shady business partners, and one guy who swore his dog Walker was stealing his bourbon. So this wasn't unusual. Not yet. I looked at the photo, then back at him. "You think she's cheating?" He hesitated. "I don't know. That's not why I'm here." I raised an eyebrow. "She's been different lately," he continued. "Leaving at strange hours. Waking up in the middle of the night and staring out the window. She talks in her sleep. She laughs, sometimes." "Laughs?" He nodded slowly. "Like someone else is in the room with her. I've started sleeping in the guest room. But that's not even the worst part." Now I leaned forward. He lowered his voice. "If you follow her, don't do it after 10 p.m. And if she's wearing red, stop. Immediately." I stared at him for a moment, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, I sat back. "Okay," I said, mostly to stall. "What happens after 10? "I don't know," he said. "I never followed her. But the last time she came home late, she was in a red dress. And her eyes," he shuddered. "Her eyes weren't her eyes." I should have walked away then. Told him I didn't do ghost stories or domestic hallucinations. But something about the fear in his voice kept me rooted. "What's your name?" I asked. "Darren Holt." "And hers?" "Claire Holt. She works at the university library. She's usually home by 7. But lately..." I nodded. "I'll take the case. Standard rate, plus hazard pay if things get weird." He didn't smile. Just placed a thick envelope on my desk and walked out without another word. The first few days were boring, as most stakeouts are. Claire Holt had a routine. She left the library around 6, stopped at the bakery on Rue Saint-Denis, and walked home alone. She never noticed me. She didn't wear red. Until the 5th night. It was 9:48 p.m. when I saw her leave the building. No coat, even though the wind bit like broken glass. Just a crimson-red dress, silky and unnatural in its movement, like it resisted the air instead of flowing with it. I hesitated. 10 minutes, I told myself. Just 10. I tailed her past the boulevard, down a side street I didn't recognize. She moved quickly, but not hurriedly, like she was being drawn somewhere rather than running from something. Her hair was unbound now, whipping wildly around her face. I should have turned back. She walked until the streetlights thinned and the sidewalks cracked. Then she turned into a gated park, Parc des Cendres. I hadn't heard that name in years. Not since I was a kid. It had been closed after a series of disappearances in the early 2000s. No one ever said it was haunted. They didn't need to. The silence around it was enough. The gate creaked as she passed through, but she didn't open it. It just moved. I followed, more carefully now, trying not to crunch fallen branches underfoot. She stopped near a rusted fountain, long dry. Around it stood 6 stone pillars, half collapsed. She stepped inside the circle they formed, and then she was gone. No dramatic flash. No swirling mist. She just wasn't there anymore. I ran to the spot. Looked around. Touched the stones. Nothing. And then the air changed. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't colder or warmer, it just wasn't right. Like the molecules had rearranged into a different pattern, and I didn't belong inside it. A voice behind me whispered, "You weren't supposed to follow." I spun, but there was no one there. That's when I noticed the trail. It wasn't footprints, it was something deeper. A line of blackened grass and decaying leaves, like her path had rotted the ground itself. It led away from the fountain and deeper into the trees. I followed. The trail twisted unnaturally, doubling back on itself, creating impossible loops. Every few feet I'd see flashes, like the shadows were remembering things. A figure dangling from a tree. A child's shoe. A red ribbon snagged on a thorn. And then I saw her again. She stood in the center of a small clearing, staring up at a twisted statue. It was maybe 12 feet tall, vaguely human, but wrong. The proportions were off, arms too long, head too narrow. Its hands were cupped like it was holding something invisible. Claire knelt at its base and began to whisper in a language I'd never heard. I took a photo. That was the mistake. The shutter snapped loud in the silence, and Claire's head jerked around. But it wasn't Claire anymore. Her eyes were solid black. No whites. No irises. Just endless dark. Her mouth smiled too wide. And she stood without using her legs. She floated. "Did he send you?" she asked. Or something asked, through her mouth. I backed up. "Claire, No," it said. "You used your own eyes." Then she vanished again. This time, I didn't chase her. I ran. Back in my apartment, I locked every door, closed the blinds, and stared at the photo I'd taken. Except there was nothing in it. Just the clearing. No statue. No woman. No trail. The next morning, I called Darren. No answer. I drove to his place. Empty. Not just missing, erased. No furniture. No sign anyone had lived there. The mailbox had a different name. The neighbors swore no one named Holt had ever lived there. I pulled out my notebook. Darren's handwriting was gone. Just empty pages. I checked my phone. No photos. No call history. I sat on the curb, heart pounding, and realized something had followed me back. Not Claire. Not the thing inside her. Something older. It didn't like being seen. And now it was erasing me. I left the neighborhood before noon. Something told me not to stay in one place too long, not while it was looking for me. I drove without a destination, winding through the city like I could outpace whatever was peeling me out of the world. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in a cheap motel on the outskirts of Laval, watching the shadows in the corners of the room. I'd turned every mirror around, drawn the curtains tight, and unplugged the television. Even with all that, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching from inside my own reflection. At 2:13 a.m., the bathroom faucet turned on by itself. A slow, deliberate hiss. I didn't check it. The next morning, I went to the university library. It was the last place Claire Holt had been officially seen, according to Darren. Assuming Darren ever existed. The library was a massive stone structure near the river, part Gothic, part brutalist, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to be terrifying or just ugly. I flashed my old student alumni ID, long expired, but no one looked too closely, and headed inside. The main desk clerk pointed me toward the special archives section. Claire Holt, she repeated. Sure, I know her. Quiet type. Works nights. She still work here? She furrowed her brow. I think so. She's on extended leave, though. Something about a family emergency. Haven't seen her in 2 weeks. The trail was cold, but the archives weren't. The door to the staff-only section had a broken lock. It swung open with a soft groan, and the scent that hit me was wrong. Not mold. Not rot. It was older than that. Like the smell of something that had been sealed away for too long. The room was dark. No windows. I pulled out my flashlight and stepped in. Rows of antique books, crumbling newspapers, and sealed boxes lined the walls. I ran the light over a few of them. Most were labeled in French, Latin, even Greek. But one thin leather-bound volume stood out. It had no title. I opened it. The pages were brittle and handwritten. Symbols. Illustrations. Rituals, maybe. Whatever it was meticulous. And terrifying. The further I flipped, the more the drawings changed. Human figures warped into animalistic forms. Spirals around their eyes. Bodies suspended over altars of stone. Statues with cupped hands. Like the one in the woods. At the very back of the book, something had been stuffed between the pages. A photo. Claire. Wearing red. Standing in the middle of a circle of robed figures. Her mouth open wide, like she was screaming, or singing. And behind her, the statue. But this time, there were eyes in its cupped hands. Dozens of them. Still wet. I dropped the book. Then I ran. Outside the library, the sky was grayer than it should have been. Like a storm was coming, but there was no wind, no birds, no sound at all. People walked past me without looking up, their footsteps oddly muffled. I tried to call an old contact at the police department, Francois. We'd worked cases together back when I still believed in logical explanations. His number didn't exist. Neither did the office he worked in. I called a friend. Voicemail. I called another. Disconnected. It was like the longer I stayed in the case, the smaller my world became. And that night, my reflection blinked when I didn't. I needed answers. Real ones. Not more whispers or vanishing names. So I did something stupid. I went back to Parc des Centres. I arrived just before dusk. The gates were locked this time, but the lock crumbled under pressure, like it had rusted through centuries in a single week. The trail was still there. Barely. The line of decay that led into the woods was fainter now, like it was healing, or hiding. I followed it. The air was thick, humid with silence. No insects. No birds. Even my footsteps felt swallowed. I passed the fountain. The pillars. And into the clearing. The statue was gone. But someone stood where it had been. Claire. She was barefoot, her red dress now tattered and moving like it had a mind of its own. She smiled. You shouldn't be here. I need answers. You already have them, she said softly. You just don't want to believe them. What is it? I asked. What did I see that night? She tilted her head, eyes soft with something between pity and hunger. Something that waits. That watches. That chooses. It used me. I thought I could control it. I thought if I fed it, it would protect me. Fed it? She nodded. Memories. Names. People. I swallowed hard. You fed it, Darren. Her expression didn't change. He loved you, I said. He was terrified for you. He was the first name I gave it, she whispered. The first thing I erased. I thought it would be enough. I stepped back. She reached into her dress and pulled out a photograph. Me. Sitting in my office. Pen in hand. Unaware. You saw it, she said. You shouldn't have. It's part of you now. Like a thread. And threads can unravel everything. Then she smiled. Not at me. At the space behind me. I turned. And everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying in my apartment. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. Everything was normal. Except it wasn't. My ID had no name. My reflection blinked out of sync. My voicemail had no saved messages. My name was missing from every contact list. I drove to my parents' place in Gatineau. They didn't recognize me. The door closed slowly in my face, and I heard my mother say, "Who was that?" My father, "No idea. Wrong house, maybe." I stood on the lawn for a long time. Then I walked away. Later that night, I returned to the motel in Laval. The clerk didn't remember me. I asked for a room under my name. She looked up. What name? I hesitated. That's when I realized. I didn't remember. Not just my name. My address. My age. My past. Everything was fraying. I stared into the motel mirror. And the man looking back wasn't blinking at all. He moved when I didn't. The man in the mirror. My reflection. It just stood there, smiling slightly. Like it had been waiting. I stepped back from the mirror. So did he, but a second too late. Just enough to notice. My breath caught in my throat. I turned away, heart pounding, and looked around the room. No sound, no footsteps. But I felt watched. Not from outside. Not even inside. From something just beyond the fabric of the world. I grabbed my bag and ran. I spent the next 3 days in transit, switching cities, sleeping in waiting rooms, trying to stay moving. Whatever this was, I thought I could outrun it. But everywhere I went, I felt more detached. People glanced past me like I was a shadow on their peripheral vision. On the 4th day, I found myself outside an old church in Trois-Rivières. The doors were locked, but an elderly priest let me in when I banged hard enough. His name was Father Lucien, and he looked like he'd read too many books he couldn't talk about. He made me tea, sat me down, and listened to my story without flinching. When I finished, he crossed himself, then walked into the back and returned with an old wooden box. Inside was a single book wrapped in cloth. It doesn't have a name, he said. But I've seen one like it before. A long time ago, in Avignon. A case like yours. What happened to them? I asked. They vanished, he said. But not completely. Just enough to be forgotten. He opened the book. The pages were dry, brittle. On one page was a sketch of the statue, the exact one I'd seen. Another showed a woman in red, arms lifted to the sky, mouth open in praise or horror. And beneath that, a symbol. A spiral inside a spiral, dripping into a black void. Father Lucien tapped it. This is a gate. To where? He didn't answer. Instead, he said, what you saw is old. Pre-human, maybe pre-time. We call it the Red Watcher. It doesn't kill. It doesn't haunt. It replaces. I frowned. What does that mean? It means you're still here. But less. Every time someone forgets your name, or a memory of you disappears, it grows. In your place. I felt sick. Is there a way to stop it? He looked at me with tired eyes. You shouldn't be asking that. The only thing you can do now is contain it. How? You sever the thread. That night, I stood in front of a mirror. Not in a motel. Not in my apartment. Just an abandoned building on the outskirts of town, one I'd found by instinct more than logic. The kind of place that felt right for rituals, or endings. I had the old book. A blade. Candles arranged in a circle. The air was thick and heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The reflection watched me. This time, I didn't flinch. You're not me, I said. It grinned wider. I raised the blade. You've been following me since that night. But you weren't the only one watching. The candles flickered. I began the incantation Father Lucien had marked. Latin, mostly, though some of it felt wrong to speak. The syllables burned the back of my throat. The reflection began to twitch. Its smile vanished. I stepped closer to the glass. You replace what you consume, I whispered. But I remember who I am. That's enough to fight you. The reflection screamed. Not aloud. In my head. 1,000 voices, mine, Darren's, Claire's, twisting into something primal. The mirror cracked. I didn't stop. I finished the words and drove the blade into my own palm. Blood smeared across the glass. The reflection shattered. And so did I. I woke up on a bench in Parc des Centres. It was morning. The sky was clear. Birds chirped. People jogged past. I sat up slowly, looking at my hands. Whole. Real. I checked my phone. My name was in my contacts again. I had call history. Photos. Memories. I was back. Or so I thought. That night, I visited Claire's apartment. It was dark. Empty. But inside, I found something, one final envelope. No note. Just a mirror. Covered in red cloth. I stared at it for a long time. Then I left it there. Some things aren't meant to be understood. Some cases don't end. They just wait. Story number 2. I was 2 fingers deep into a glass of bourbon when she walked in. White blouse. Dark slacks. No umbrella, even though it had been raining sideways since noon. She stood just inside the doorway of my office like she wasn't sure if she'd already made a mistake. Mr. Weaver, she asked. That's what it says on the door, I replied, setting the glass down. You're either a client or lost. Either way, come in and sit. She hesitated before crossing the room. Her hands were clenched into fists so tight her knuckles were bone white. She sat stiffly, back straight, like she was being interviewed by God. I need to hire you, she said. To find my brother. I reached for a notepad. Name. Simon Albrecht. Age. 33. Last known address. She slid a folder across the desk. I opened it to find a handful of old photographs, a Canadian passport, a tattered birth certificate, a high school diploma, and a blurry Polaroid of 2 teenagers standing in front of a red bicycle. She pointed to the girl in the photo. That's me. I was 15. He was 16. I looked up at her. And what makes you think he's missing? He called me 2 weeks ago, she said. From a number I didn't recognize. He sounded panicked. Said he needed help. Said someone was coming for him. And then the line went dead. Police? She gave a bitter laugh. They said he doesn't exist. I raised an eyebrow. They couldn't find any record of him. Not in the provincial database. Not in the hospital. Not in school records. Not even his birth certificate, which you're holding right now. They said I forged it. I flipped through the documents again. Everything looked real, aged, stamped, notarized. But I'd seen good fakes before. I'm not a miracle worker, I said. If your brother's gone off the grid, there's only so much I can do. She leaned forward. No, she said. You don't understand. He's not hiding. He's being erased. That got my attention. Erased? I went to our old house in St. Laurent. The new owners said there was never a family named Albrecht. I asked our old neighbors. They remember my parents. They remember me. But not Simon. Friends. Teachers. Same story. They remember me, but not him. And your parents? Her face froze. A long silence stretched between us. They died in a car accident 15 years ago, she said. I was in the hospital for weeks. Simon visited every day. I'm sorry. She shook her head. I'm telling you, he was real. We grew up together. He taught me to ride a bike. He used to make me tea when I had a cold. He was real. I didn't respond right away. Something about the way she said it, not desperate, not unhinged. Just quiet. Absolute. Like someone trying to hold on to the edge of a dream. What do you do, miss? Naomi, she said. Naomi Albrecht. I'm a physicist. I work at a private lab in Pointe Claire. Quantum information theory. I smirked. Fancy. She didn't smile. You're not the first person I've gone to, she said. But I think you'll be the last. Why me? Because I found a name scribbled on the back of one of Simon's old notebooks, she said. Your name. Now I was paying attention. You ever met me before? She shook her head. I reached for my bourbon. All right, I said. Let's find your ghost. I started with the basics. I scanned Simon's documents. Nothing pinged in any federal or provincial system. The passport number wasn't in the registry. His birth certificate couldn't be matched to a hospital. The high school, St. Ange Secondary, had records for a Naomi Albrecht, but nothing on a Simon. I tried the yearbook archive. 2007. Page after page of smiling teens. Naomi's photo, there. Row 3, second from the left. The space beside her. Blank. No photo. No name. Just a black square where a student should be. Okay. I visited St. Ange in person. Told the front office I was looking into alumni records for a private scholarship. The secretary, a bored woman with an ancient monitor, pulled up the graduating classes. There was no record of a Simon Albrecht. But when I mentioned Naomi, she said, oh, yeah. Bright girl. Quiet. Poor thing, lost her parents young. Do you remember her having a brother? The woman frowned. No, I don't think so. Why? No reason, I said. Next, I tracked the address on Simon's old ID. A quiet two-story on a residential block in St. Laurent. A young couple answered the door, baby on hip, polite but confused. "No, sorry," the man said. "We've lived here 5 years. Bought it from a woman named Beatrice something. No Albrecht." I asked if I could see the basement. He said sure. And that's where I found the mark. It was faint, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. A small indentation in the concrete, about the size of a coin. A spiral carved into the floor. I'd seen one like it before. In a church in Trois-Rivières. In a case I'd sworn I'd never talk about again. I took a photo. When I checked it an hour later, the spiral wasn't there. I returned to my office late that night. Naomi was already there, sitting in the dark. "He called again," she said. "At 2 a.m. last night." Whispered one sentence. "What was it?" She looked up at me, voice shaking. "They almost got you, too." That night, I dreamed of spirals. Endless spirals, folding in on themselves, unraveling. Voices in the dark whispering names I didn't remember. And in the center of it all, a boy I'd never seen, smiling at me like we'd grown up together. The boy in my dream said nothing. He just watched me, standing in the center of a crumbling playground I recognized from my own childhood. There was a merry-go-round that never turned, a swing set that always creaked, and a tunnel slide so dark it felt like a throat. Simon stood barefoot in the sand, head tilted, arms slack at his sides. When I tried to speak, my voice didn't come out. I reached for him, but the moment I did, the sky cracked open like old glass, and the playground sank into a spiral. I woke up gasping. 3:17 a.m. The office was silent. But someone had written on the inside of my window. 3 letters. Run. The next morning, I visited Naomi's lab in Pointe Claire. It was tucked into a strip of industrial buildings that could have passed for storage units. Inside, however, was anything but ordinary. White walls. Air so sterile it made your lungs feel freshly scrubbed. She met me at the secured door with a keycard swipe and a weary expression. "I thought you might come," she said. "I've been digging too." She led me into a low-lit server room lined with blinking machines and humming towers of data. "Quantum theory isn't just abstract math," she said. "It's about the fundamental structure of information. How the universe stores it, communicates it, and maybe, erases it." I stared at her. "You're saying someone is deleting your brother from reality?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I have a theory. It started when I analyzed one of Simon's notebooks under our scanner." She pulled up a screen. On it was an image of a handwritten page, except half of it looked pixelated, like it had glitched during scanning. "We ran an enhancement," she continued. "But instead of recovering the data, the AI produced noise. Patterns. Spirals." She zoomed in. The same spiral. Over and over. Hidden in ink strokes. The shape of the letters. Even the lines on the paper. "I think whatever's doing this is rewriting information at the quantum level," she whispered. "Like a virus. But instead of infecting computers, it infects memory. History. And people." She nodded once. "That's why you're involved. Simon left breadcrumbs." "Then why are you still here?" I asked. "Why hasn't it erased you?" She looked away. "I think it's trying. Slowly. I've noticed gaps. Moments I lose time. Objects that vanish from my apartment. People looking at me like they expected someone else." She pulled something from her pocket. A page torn from a photo album. Me, her, and Simon, sitting at a diner booth. Except I'd never been there. Never met them before last week. And yet, I remembered the taste of the milkshake. The creak of the booth. Simon laughing at something I said. I blinked hard. Do you remember it? She asked. I nodded, stunned. What the hell is happening to me? We drove to the one place that might hold real answers. An abandoned psychiatric hospital called St. Ferrand, located an hour north, tucked deep into the Laurentians. According to one of Simon's old journal entries, half legible and dated 2009, he'd come here looking for someone named Dr. R. The entry ended mid-sentence. St. Ferrand had been closed since the early 1990s after a fire in the East Wing. The record said it was empty. The rusted gate disagreed. Naomi and I pushed through overgrown brush and followed a winding path to the front entrance. The main doors had been busted open long ago. Graffiti covered the lobby walls. The air stank of mildew, ash, and something else, something coppery and thin. Inside, we found remnants, broken beds, shattered wheelchairs, fragments of charts. I shone my flashlight across a cracked nameplate on an office door. Dr. A. Renault. We stepped in. Dust and silence. But inside his file cabinet, sealed in a plastic sleeve, was a reel of microfilm and a single page of notes. Project Spiral, Subject 5 continues to destabilize. Despite repeated attempts at containment, he exhibits resistance to erasure. Memories persist across multiple observers. Subject name, S. Albrecht. Emergency intervention pending. Simon had been a patient. Or a test subject. Why him? I whispered. Why erase him? Naomi shook her head. He used to talk about dreams. Recurring ones. He'd draw these symbols, over and over. Said they weren't his ideas, just things he remembered. Things from before. Before what? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for the microfilm. I know a guy who can digitize this, she said. But we'll need to. From the hall came a sound. Footsteps. Not heavy. Not rushed. Just steady. One step. Then another. I turned off the flashlight. Naomi and I crouched behind the desk, hearts pounding. The steps grew closer. A figure moved past the doorway, slow, gliding, deliberate. Not a squatter. Not security. Something else. The lights flickered. The air turned cold. I reached for my phone to record, but the screen had gone black, and not from battery loss. It had collapsed inward, like the pixels had melted into a whirlpool. When the steps faded, we waited 5 more minutes before bolting out the back. That night, Naomi called me from a motel off Highway 15. They found me, she said. I saw it again. What? She didn't answer right away. Then, Simon. But not him. Not anymore. What do you mean? He looked at me, she whispered. And I didn't recognize his eyes. They were empty. Like someone was looking through him. Static cut across the line. Then, they know your name now. Click. I checked my fridge the next morning. Half the food labels were blank. My birth certificate, in the lockbox under the floorboard. Gone. I logged into Facebook. My profile had 0 friends. 0 posts. 0 photos. My name was still there. But not for long. I don't remember driving to the motel. But I remember standing outside Naomi's door. Room 7. Same as the number of spirals in Simon's sketch. I knocked once. No answer. Twice. Still nothing. I tried the handle. It turned. The room was empty. Not just empty, wiped. No sheets. No suitcase. No trace of anyone ever having been there. The only thing left was a single slip of paper on the bed, centered like someone had placed it with care. It read, "Memory is a thread. Pull it long enough, and something will follow it back." No name. No handwriting. Just black ink on cream paper. I stepped out into the hallway, stunned. The world felt thinner. Like a screen had been pulled taut between me and reality. I didn't go back to my apartment. I couldn't. Not when I knew it wouldn't remember me. Instead, I returned to the one place that started this. The office. Or what was left of it. My name had been scraped off the frosted glass door. Inside, the desk was bare. My files were gone. Not stolen, never filed. I opened drawers and found them empty, clean, untouched. And in the center of the room, sitting on my old chair, was Simon. He looked like he hadn't aged a day from the photo Naomi gave me. His hands rested calmly on his knees. His head tilted. And his eyes were dark, unreadable. "Simon?" I asked, voice dry. He smiled faintly. "You remember me," he said. Not a question. "I think so," I said. "Sometimes I do. That's more than most." He stood slowly, like a puppet relearning balance. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't want you involved. But you were part of it. You always were. I don't understand." He nodded toward the window. Outside, the city looked normal. But I could see edges now. Fractures. Buildings that shimmered at their corners. Signs that no longer had words. People whose faces blurred if I looked too long. "It's not the world that's changing," Simon said. "It's the code beneath it. They found a way to rewrite it." "Who's they?" He turned to me, expression solemn. "Not who. What?" He stepped closer. "You saw the spirals. You felt the slips. You know what they mean. The universe isn't a constant. It's rewritten, moment by moment, like a dream shared by everything that exists. And sometimes, something gets in. Something that shouldn't." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You were there, at St. Farron. Not this lifetime. But the last one. You helped them build the gate." I recoiled. "That's not possible." "You forgot," he said. "Because forgetting is how we survive." A crack split across the floor beneath us. Thin. Jagged. Like a seam in a stitched-together story. Simon looked down. "They've found me again," he whispered. "This time, there's no hiding." "What can I do?" I asked. He handed me a notebook. Inside were pages and pages of symbols. Equations. Diagrams. And a single phrase at the end. "What is erased can be remembered." Simon's body jerked suddenly, like a string had been cut. His eyes rolled back. He collapsed. And then, he was gone. No body. No trace. Just dust. And that notebook in my hands. I fled the office as the walls began to hum. The streets were empty. Or maybe the people had stopped registering to me. I drove until I reached the old church in Trois-Rivières, the same one with the spiral in the floor. Father Lucien was gone. The chapel was half collapsed. But the spiral remained. I stood over it and opened the notebook. The symbols glowed faintly in the candlelight I'd brought. I didn't know the language, not really. But I remembered the pattern. The way the syllables felt in the back of my throat. I began to speak. And the spiral moved. I fell through the floor. Not physically, but mentally. Consciously. The chapel dissolved into smoke. Time rippled backward. I saw Naomi as a child, riding a bike with training wheels, then as an infant, then as a thought in someone's mind. I saw Simon, etched into photo albums, mirrors, birth certificates. I saw myself, over and over, walking past people who once knew me, and now didn't. I spoke the final phrase. Memoriam restitutum. And everything stopped. I woke up in the diner booth. Naomi sat across from me. Simon beside her. We were laughing. I remembered the taste of the milkshake. The jukebox humming in the background. The way Naomi always tapped her spoon before stirring her coffee. The world felt solid again. No spirals. No cracks. For a moment, I thought I'd undone it. Then I saw the waitress. No face. Just a blur. And when she turned toward us, the spiral was carved where her mouth should be. Simon looked at me, eyes wide. They're still here, he said. Naomi gripped my hand. So what do we do now? I asked. Simon looked down at the notebook, now in my hands again. We remember. Story number 3. The letter came in a plain white envelope. No return address. No stamp. Just slid under my office door in the dead of night, like whoever sent it didn't want to be seen by the world, or by whatever might be watching it. Inside, a short, typed message on thick paper. Mr. Weaver. Please investigate the disappearance of 5 students from St. Elias boarding school, between 1982 and 1986. No bodies were found. No police reports filed. The answers are in the East Wing. Start with the mirror. No name. No contact info. Just a final line handwritten in pen so faint it looked like blood diluted in water. They only vanish if they look too long. St. Elias had been closed for decades. Built on the edge of a cliff in northern Quebec, it looked more like a medieval asylum than a school. 3 stories of stone and iron lattice windows, complete with its own bell tower and private dorms, long since boarded up and forgotten. I'd heard the rumors before. The usual, teachers going mad, strange illnesses, one girl who reportedly aged 40 years overnight. Urban legends. Ghost stories. Still, something about the letter pulled at me. I couldn't say why. Just that itch behind the eyes that tells you something wants to be found. I packed a flashlight, my recorder, and a bottle of something to take the edge off. The gates to St. Elias were rusted open. The main hall was littered with leaves and broken desks. The air smelled like mold and metal. I followed the map I'd printed from an old architectural archive. East Wing. Top floor. Dormitories. The hallway stretched like a gullet, lined with doors. All locked, most splintered. At the end, a door with the number 313, carved in deep, crude strokes. Not painted. Scratched. I tried the handle. It opened. Inside was dust and decay. 2 broken beds, an old desk, a torn school uniform on a hanger. And against the far wall, the mirror. Tall. Oval. Standing on clawed legs. The glass surface was pristine, too pristine for a place like this. No dust. No cracks. Just a flat, black sheen that reflected nothing. I stepped in front of it. Nothing looked back. I waved my hand. Nothing. I turned on the flashlight and aimed it at the mirror. It didn't reflect the light. It absorbed it. Like it was hungry. I took a step closer. My breath fogged the glass, but there was no breath on my lips. I whispered, "Who are you?" And the mirror whispered back. Not in words. In images. Suddenly, I wasn't in the room. I was in a hallway lined with mirrors. Dozens of them. All cracked. All facing each other. And in every mirror, different versions of me. Smiling. Screaming. Weeping. One with blood down his chin. One without eyes. And one that wasn't me at all. It wore my face. But it smiled with purpose. Then it stepped through the mirror. I fell backward into reality, gasping, sweating. The room was dark now. Completely. I couldn't even see the door I'd come through. I turned to leave. The door was gone. Just wall. And the mirror stood behind me, gleaming. I heard footsteps. I fumbled for my recorder. Hit record. October 12, 10:17 p.m. I found the mirror. Room 313. It doesn't show reflections. It shows versions. Memories. I think it took me somewhere. Not physically, mentally. Maybe more. I need to. A knock at the wall. 3 slow knocks. I turned, flashlight raised. Nothing. Another knock. Behind me. I spun around. The mirror had changed. It now showed the dorm room, yes, but a version of it that was clean. Lit by sunlight. Laughter outside. And 5 students standing in front of it. 2 boys. 3 girls. Smiling. Then one by one, their smiles faltered. They turned toward me. As if they could see me. And began to scream. All 5. Mouth stretched unnaturally wide. Eyes bleeding down their cheeks. Skin cracking, like porcelain in flame. Then. Gone. Blackness. The mirror now showed only one thing. Me. Finally. But not quite. My reflection was standing in the room. I was not. I waved. It waved. I frowned. It smiled. Then it walked toward me. Through the mirror. I woke up in bed. My own bed. At home. No idea how I'd gotten there. The window was open. Cold air curling through the curtain. I reached for my phone. It had a single notification. Photo received. I opened it. A picture of me. Sleeping. Taken from above. The next morning, I returned to St. Elias. Room 313 was sealed with bricks. No sign it had ever been opened. The mirror. Gone. I asked around town. No one remembered the school ever existing. Even the locals stared at me like I was lost. One elderly man, sweeping outside his bookstore, leaned in as I passed. "You looked in the mirror, didn't you?" he asked. I froze. He nodded solemnly. "You always come back different." I couldn't let it go. Even after the mirror vanished and the dorm was bricked over, even after the townsfolk denied ever hearing of St. Elias, the dream kept returning. Each night I'd find myself standing in front of the mirror, sometimes in my office, sometimes in rooms I'd never seen before. And always, my reflection would do something just slightly wrong. Smile when I frowned. Turn left when I turned right. And on the sixth night, it spoke. "You're not the first," it said. "You won't be the last." The next morning, I packed a bag and drove to Montreal to visit someone who owed me a favor. Her name was Dr. Elise Marchand. Former forensic psychologist turned academic ghost hunter. She'd helped me once before on a missing persons case that ended in a monastery basement and 3 bodies that aged in reverse. Since then, we kept in loose contact, mostly by email, sometimes in nightmares. She lived alone above a crematorium. I knocked 3 times. She opened the door before the 3rd knock landed. "I was wondering when you'd come," she said. "You heard?" "I dreamed," she said. "Come in." Her apartment was filled with books, real ones, leather-bound, yellowed by time. No electricity aside from a few flickering lamps powered by an old generator. She poured tea and sat across from me like we were about to conduct a séance. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. From the letter to the mirror to the dreams. When I finished, she nodded grimly. "Do you know what a psychomorphic relic is?" she asked. "Educate me." "It's an object that doesn't just hold memories, it feeds on them. Mirrors are the oldest kind. They've always been thresholds. Thin spots. Thin. Between here," she said, tapping her own forehead, "and there." She pointed to the space behind me. "What's on the other side?" She didn't answer. Just handed me a book. Specularia, Ritual Objects and Reflective Vessels. Inside was an illustration of a mirror almost identical to the one in room 313. Oval frame. Clawed feet. The glass dark, ink-like. Below it, Latin text and an English translation. "A vessel of reflection is not a tool of light, but..." My mouth went dry. "I think the mirror is still connected to you," Elise said. "Even if it's gone from that room. Objects like this don't obey space. They cling to minds. To perception. Then how do I get rid of it?" "You don't," she said. "You contain it." I raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" "You find its origin. Its anchor. You reframe the mirror in its own mythology, and you shut it in." She opened a drawer and pulled out a map of the original St. Elias grounds. "There's something you didn't see," she said. "Below the east wing." She tapped a circle marked, "Service Access/Ritual Storage." "They built over something," she whispered. "Something older than the school. It took 2 days to secure access through what remained of the boiler tunnels under St. Elias." Elise came with me, armed with a thermos of holy water, a mirror wrapped in cloth, and a book of incantations that looked too new to be published and too old to be safe. We passed rusted pipes, walls etched with names of boys and girls who never left, and a room filled with scorched chairs that smelled like regret. Eventually, we reached the chamber. A round room, deep beneath the dormitories. In the center, a mirror frame. Empty. Just the frame. But on the walls, dozens of photographs. All different people. All standing in front of mirrors. Some smiling. Some crying. Some melting. And on one wall, scratched deep into stone. Only the mirror sees the truth. The rest is borrowed. Elise touched the frame. "The glass isn't gone," she said. "It's moved." I stepped back. "To where?" She looked up at me with something like dread. "To you." That night, I dreamed of the dorm room again. But this time, I wasn't just seeing it. I was in it. I stood before the mirror frame, only now it did have glass. It showed me sitting at my desk. Drinking. Reading the case file. Getting the letter. It showed me, watching myself. Then the reflection looked up. Directly at me. And smiled. I screamed myself awake. Elise and I returned to the chamber the next night. She had a plan. We need to finish the ritual, she said. Whatever they started in the ADS, they never finished. That's why it's leaking. What happens if we do? We shut the loop. We trap it back where it belongs. She placed the cloth-covered mirror inside the frame. Began reciting from the book. I stood by with the flashlight, watching the walls. The photographs had changed. Now, every one of them was me. Over and over. Bleeding. Crying. Laughing. Screaming. Then one photo blinked. And I felt my skin crawl. Elise finished the chant. The mirror lit up. Not with reflection, but with possibility. 1,000 versions of me flickered across the surface. Each one twisted. Each one reaching out. She screamed, now. I stepped forward and placed both hands on the glass. And whispered the last line of the ritual. Know thyself, or be known by it. The mirror shattered inward. A sound like thunder collapsed the chamber. The photographs burned. The frame melted. Then. Silence. The kind that feels eternal. I woke up in a hospital. Elise was gone. No one had seen her. My name was on the chart. But no emergency contacts. No prior records. The nurse asked if I'd suffered a head injury. I told her I'd fallen. She smiled. And for a moment, I thought I saw a spiral in her eyes. Back home, I found a note taped to my mirror. In Elisa's handwriting. We didn't erase it. We reframed it. Don't forget who you are. Don't ever forget. Or it will come back. I turned to look at my reflection. It looked back. For now. I didn't keep any mirrors in my apartment after that. The bathroom one came down first. Then the hallway. Then the old framed one above my desk. Even the reflective toaster had to go. I replaced it with a dull black one that burned everything equally and never showed a thing. For a while, it worked. The dreams stopped. The whispers faded. I started taking cases again. Small stuff. Cheating spouses. Stolen inheritance. Nothing that stared back. But then, 2 weeks ago, I got a voicemail. No number. No voice. Just the sound of breathing. And beneath it, faint and dragging, the scratch of something sharp across glass. I brought the last mirror out of storage. Wrapped in sheets, tucked behind old boxes in the basement of the building I swore I'd move out of. It was the same mirror I'd taken from St. Elias. The one Elise used in the ritual. I had no reason to keep it, but some part of me always knew I hadn't really finished the job. I set it in the middle of the room. Unwrapped it. The glass was whole again. My face stared back at me, older now. Tired. Eyes sunken from too many late nights and close calls. But it blinked too early. I froze. Then, calmly, I sat down across from it. I know what you are, I said. I know what you want. The reflection didn't move. Then it did. Not to mimic me, but on its own. It stood up while I remained seated. Tilted its head in that way I'd come to fear. And smiled. But not like a predator. Like a host. I reached into my coat and pulled out Elisa's book. There was one final ritual in the back. A theory she never dared try. Inverse reflection binding. It wasn't about banishing. It was about trapping. But not the mirror. Me. The ritual required intent, blood, and surrender. I had the first two. I just didn't know if I had the third. The mirror rippled. My reflection stepped forward. Its hands pressed flat against the inside of the glass. Mine did not. I opened the book, drew a blade across my palm, and began to speak. By sight and self, I do confine the one who walks the me. The mirror shuddered. The room darkened. The reflection began to scream. But it was silent, only I heard it. Inside. Behind my eyes. It pounded on the glass. And then, one final beat too late, it mirrored me again. But it was trapped. I stood. It did too. But it didn't move on its own anymore. It had to follow. I sealed the mirror in lead foil and buried it beneath a concrete floor in a place I won't name. The kind of place where the ground forgets what's placed on it. And then I walked away. Elise never returned my calls. Her apartment above the crematorium. Vacant. The record said no one had ever lived there. When I asked around, people remembered the building but not the woman. I checked the photos we took during the ritual. She wasn't in any of them. Only me. That was 3 months ago. But last night, I passed a storefront window. Didn't mean to look. Didn't mean to stop. But I saw a reflection I didn't recognize. It wore my face. Smiled wider than I ever would. And behind it, just for a second, I saw room 313. Clean. Sunlit. Waiting. So now I write this. In case it happens again. In case I disappear. If you find this, and you're reading it, do not look in the mirror. Not when it blinks first. Not when it doesn't show you. Not when it shows you too well. Because the mirror isn't just glass. It's a door. And once it opens, it doesn't close.